Hello, everybody. Welcome to another TBR swap where two people who you think are friends really just hate on the stuff the other person likes. And as always,
kind of masochist.
and as always, well, you know what? If you're new here, there is a Venn diagram of things
We're wearing the Venn diagram.
We're wearing the Venn diagram. But I'm joined today by Liene's library. Thank you for coming. And for the new people, introduce yourself.
Oh, me. I'm Liene from Liene's library. Yep.
Cool.
Nailed it.
She also does fantasy. Oh, this way. And she's known for
Loving
Abercrombie.
First Law.
Yeah. First Law. That's actually how we met. Although everyone in the chat, I think, knows that. So hello, chat, welcome. So let's get started because we have lots to say. Is there a book you want to start with, or do you want me to choose?
How have we done it before? Has it been?
I think we usually wait till the end for the thing people want to talk about most.
Yeah, I think we go like the order that we read them, except for the thing that it doesn't matter.
So Yumi has to be last. Yeah. Because that's what everyone's here for.
So chronological besides Yumi.
Okay, so what did you read first?
What did I read first? I think actually I might have read Yumi last anyway, so that might just be true regardless of the order.
I'll speak my truth right now. If you hate Windhaven, that will be the most devastating to me of all of these books. I literally don't care if you hate anything else. That will be devastating to me.
Well, I know it's in the thumbnail, but real quick. So what we're talking about is obviously this, but last, Yumi the Nightmare Painter,
yes.
Windhaven,
Brando Sando,
Radium Girls, and The Snow Child. I think I read. I think because I started them all kind of at the same time. I think I finished Radium Girls first, and I think I finished Windhaven next, and I think I finished Snow Child and then finished Yumi.
So chaotic.
Yes.
No, it was an accident. It was an accident last year. It happened both times last year.
I want to make a Yumi and the Nightmare Painter joke. Am I allowed?
Yes.
Because you're just actually an astral projection of me because we're the same person. So we're that's why we look the same. It's not.
Exactly. One of us is the astral projection. One of us is the real person in the real timeline. You get to decide which one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's start with Radium Girls, which was my nonfiction pick for you and also my feminine rage pick.
Indeed. I think before we've explained why we picked it and then revealed our thoughts. So I can read your notes that you've put in all the books.
Yeah, if you want to read it. I don't even remember what I wrote. There's one note. I'm going to make you read one of the notes because I'm very proud of one of my notes. Well, you can go ahead and read this one too.
So it's brief. It just says just one more thing to point to when people wonder why we have feminine rage.
That's pretty much sums it up.
Yeah.
In the chat.
But also because every year you bring this up and you're in Radium Girls, and I'm like, I haven't read Radium Girls, and you're like, oh, I should pick that. And then the next year you're like, in Radium Girls, and I'm like, I haven't read that. And you're like, I should pick that.
I know. It's just there's so many feminine rage picks. It's hard to narrow it down. What'd you think?
Yeah, it was brutal. So brutal. Just like last year when you made me read what was it? The Invisible Life? No.
The Immortal Life.
Yeah.
Henrietta Lacks.
Really will put you off your breakfast if you're trying to read this. Wow.
I messaged you that and I was like, look, this is just as like last year. You're gonna say you like it, but not really.
Yeah, it's so brutal. But also just Henrietta Lacks, it front loads the gruesome visceral brutality so that it can then now talk to you about sort of what that all means and why that's important, but they really jump scare you with the with how horrifying this is.
For those who have no idea what Radium Girls is about, it's about what time period is it? What year was this?
It's because they're using radium dials in World War I planes, right? So it's
right. Okay, that's what I thought.
World War II.
So it's during the World War I and II, and they used to use radium to make the watches and stuff like that glow. And so this is about the girls who worked in the factories and painted all of the dials with radium. And one of the things I remember most, I read this a while ago, like 2017, is like they would be like laughing at the end of their shift because they'd go into a dark room and they'd be glowing.
Yeah. Well, at this
Because they had
time, too,
radium.
like, I mean, yeah, they were painting dials in this so they would glow in the dark. So, like, pilots could see the dials in the dark. But people also just liked having wristwatches that have it. But they also were putting radium in, like, toothpaste because it made your teeth glowy and white. And they would put it
Forgot
in
about
everything. And they were like, drink radium. It's good for you. And everyone was like, yeah, radium. It's awesome. Just, it's magic dust, basically. And it's like, oh no.
Yeah, so obviously that caused significant health issues, and they all died horrific deaths.
And it was also interesting that it wasn't, I mean, there's many reasons why they didn't figure this out sooner or didn't do something about it, even though when they had figured it out. But one of the like legitimate reasons that's not just them ignoring obvious signs is how like different the symptoms could be depending on like the person, and not just because of how they would, because obviously the symptoms might be different if you are touching it versus ingesting it, sure, but not even that. Like they might be doing the exact same thing, like two girls who are both like painting dials, so they're in like contacting it the same way. They would just have really, really different symptoms because it would hit your body differently, kind of randomly.
Yeah, but like after a certain point though, it
Oh
was
yeah,
very obvious what it was.
yeah.
And then reading about how the companies just like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm not saying they're like, oh, obviously they couldn't
I
figure
know.
this out. There came a point where they definitely should have. But to begin with, when you have like a few different
Yes.
girls who are like, I have a back problem, the other ones, I've got teeth problems, the other one's got like, I have like a leg problem. Like you can forgive the doctors for being like, well, these can't be the same cause because these are like totally different things. And then when it's every single girl who works in the same factory has some kind of a problem, they're like, well, there's one thing that's the same though.
Yeah, and that is interesting, like how they figured it out. Because you are right. Like at first, even the women didn't think anything of it. You know, they
And they
like I
didn't
said, they were
want to
keeping it.
either, because it's like,
No.
being in denial about it. It's like, well, the doctor said I'm fine, and I would prefer to believe I'm fine, so I'm fine. It must be nothing.
Yeah, and then just I don't know. I was just so viscerally angry when they were just like gaslighting the women at the end. Like, no, it has nothing to do with that. Nope. And it's just like how many years they kept doing it.
I was also shocked. I mean, not that shocked, but still, even when you like know a thing, every time you get reminded of it. The way that there were no laws that said that you had to have access to your own medical records, where they were just doing medical tests. Well, one, that they were forcing them to do medical tests, which is not a thing that you can do now, thank goodness. And this is why. Not only were they forcing them to go through medical exams, then they were withholding the results of those medical exams from the girls because for obvious reasons. And I just, we take so much of that for granted, that you have a right to that information or you have a right to be treated, in a certain kind of way in the workplace. And we've so easily forgotten that like that was not a given, that corporations do not have your best interests at heart.
No, and even now, like I remember reading it and feeling like, yeah, we've come a long way, but how often is this like still happening?
Oh
Like
yeah.
I feel like you are still hearing the stories.
Yeah.
It's not about radium, but it's about other stuff. And it's just
But like
like
now, at least, like, so a company might do something like this, but it is technically, illegal to have withheld those records. So now, if you found it out, you'd be like, oh, I can sue you because this is illegal. But here, it wasn't even illegal for them to do that. So what do you do?
I know.
Like that was so interesting too, when they were like, we can see that the company is doing this thing that is hurting you, but the lawyers are like, we can only go after them if what they're doing is illegal, and this is not a thing that there's a law for. So there's no grounds on which to go after them. And they're like, it doesn't matter what we prove because there's no law that they're breaking. It's like, that's insane.
Yeah, it's like at the end, you're like, oh, look at all these people. I mean, in this case, women who had to give their lives so that laws were made.
Yeah, and then that would be the thing too, is if that because of them, then maybe a law would be passed or regulations put in place or whatever, but they would often not be retroactive. So then these women are the reason that you found out this is a problem, and that you were like, oh, well, we should not do that anymore. But this was done to you before we decided we shouldn't do this to you, so you're out of luck because that wasn't the law when they did it to you.
Yeah, and a lot of I just like remember like a lot of deathbeds where like they knew that that's what happened, but there was no, like you said, there's no recourse because it
Or
wasn't
like
legal
when
to
the
happen.
company would also send somebody in to intervene in like autopsies and stuff and like take the body and do a company autopsy instead. Like things like that again, I'm sure things
Are
like that
illegal now.
happen now, but they would be illegal.
Yeah, it's a wild story. Did you like it? Did you rate it highly? I guess I should
Yeah,
ask.
I mean, yeah, I cried
Yeah.
reading especially the end because like
Yes,
the
the end. I cried at the
yeah,
end.
because like the beginning isn't I guess I might cry out of the sheer horror of it, but it's more just being horrified. And then later, because they are so ultimately self-sacrificing when they are fighting these legal battles while they are just falling apart because they are rotting away from the radium poisoning, that and like when they learn the information that not only was this thing done to them and this is what's causing this and this is what's going on, but that it is irreversible and incurable and it's just going to keep getting worse, and there's nothing anyone can do about this. Like what's done is done. It doesn't matter if you like stop using radium, it's not going to like get better. It's in you forever. And so then watching them be like, well, I guess I'm dead anyway, so the least I can do is, you know, fight for the future for other people to not to go through this. And just wow. And also the families of them too. Like I felt kind of guilty for being surprised by how loyal their spouses were, like the men who married them, who were, instead of being like, oh, this woman is falling apart and can't like bear children and cook for me anymore, so I should leave her. No, like for the most part they would like stay by their side and be devastated to watch them fall apart, and like would try to, you know, spend all of their money to get, you know, more medical exams for them and like to get help in to take care of the house and take care of the kids and stuff and be there till the end. And that was so heartbreaking too.
Yeah, it was really like the stories of the families that like really broke me down. And yeah, and I remember like I said, it's been too long to remember names. I remember there was a couple women in particular that just like tirelessly fought
Yeah.
to change the future. And I was like so moved by it. I remember finishing that and being like, what have I done with my life? Like what am I doing to fix the future? Because these women were like you said, like literally teeth falling out, giant tumors, and they're still like to the end fighting. Oh,
And there was the one in particular too, like from the legal case, where there were so many times when I was like, so this is the scene, right? Where I shouldn't say the scene, but like, so this is the part where she dies, right? And no, she keeps somehow going. And they're like, she weighs 90 pounds. There is nothing of her. Like a blanket is too heavy for her body, but she's still going. She's still fighting the good fight and giving interviews and try like
it
I
must have
was
been in
like,
so much pain.
how?
Like so much pain. I don't know how people do it. I was so inspired. I mean, it is weirdly oddly inspiring along with like horrifying. It's a weird blend of both of them.
Yeah. I mean, they come away obviously like very sort of noble in your impression of them. It's crazy. And it's crazy how repeatedly at every opportunity, what is it? Radium, what is the name of the corporation? It's called like, I should remember that because they're the big bad. But anyway, like the corporation, the way that they have so many opportunities to be like, oh, whoopsie, let's fix it. And the way that they not only don't fix it, but then double, triple, you know, quadruple down on it and make it worse is, and then that it'll not just be like, oh, the corporation as a whole is doing this, but like individual people who are culpable for it and know exactly what like the guy who's the doctor that's been giving them these medical exams, and then they find out that he's actually, his doctorate is like in philosophy, and then
Yeah.
he's just like, well, it's not a lie that I'm a doctor, so, and everything I told them is totally true. So, and
For
I just,
some reason, it definitely like I remember when I was giving this to you, I was thinking it reminded me of, was it a Madness Most Discreet?
oh yeah, or Amanda so discreet, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was like that vibes where it was just like, oh, you're just like you're not actually a doctor. Cool.
But
Cool.
it's
But it
just
was
that, like, when he got,
real.
you would think, like, when he got, like, I understand how they think this is a fun loophole for them to go off of, but then, like, when they get found out, like, they think, I think the reaction from the lawyer or whoever it is when they, like, bring this forward to be like, haha, this is my gotcha. Like, see that you're not actually a medical doctor. That his reaction and the corporation's reaction isn't to be like, ugh, you got us. Their reaction is like, and what of it? You know, it's like,
Well,
what?
I mean, I think the most depressing thing though is like I can't imagine any corporation going to trial today and not acting like that. Like, I can't imagine a single corporation being like, we made a mistake and we need to make it right. We didn't know that this was harmful. And now that it is, like, I'd be dead before that happened. Like, there's just literally no way.
That's why like those laws are so important, because like you can't trust them to be like, oh, we did a bad thing, we should fix it. Like they only don't do these things now because it's illegal.
Yes. Yep.
So yeah, that was brutal.
Radium Girls.
Super
Great book.
brutal.
Sad read. I did like what that person said. 5 stars. I'm sobbing. I'm unwell. Highly recommend. That is kind of like a Radium Girls read.
Yeah, would definitely recommend the not eating, not because you forgot because it's so good, but just like you're not gonna want to.
There's some pretty nasty descriptions, so be prepared.
It's pretty unrelenting, because there's also I mean part of it is because there isn't just like one set of symptoms to describe and then now we've described it. They have such a variety of symptoms and they keep coming up and they develop in different ways, and the way that they try to do the tests to see what's going on with them, and then when they talk about the autopsies, and it's just on and on, and every time you think it can't get more horrifying, it's more horrifying.
Yeah, if you have body horror, just
it's actually body, like no fictional body horror has ever been this horrifying, and not just because, oh well, this is true so that makes it more horrifying. I just mean literally like viscerally horrifying.
Was this one worse than Henrietta?
Well, yeah, because like with Henrietta, it was like literally just Henrietta's body, which was
true.
A lot. Here, Henrietta times like 50. So, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't nothing. I'm sorry. I guess I'll just say I'm sorry, but highly recommend to everybody still.
Yeah.
Just for the historical factor of it.
Well, especially right now, because like the whole, because again, people forget that this isn't like a given that you have a legal right to, you know, have your medical records or have your medical records be private or all of those kinds of things. And that, yeah, don't take that for granted. The women died. A lot of women died to get you those rights.
Apparently, we've spoken about it like 3 years in a row, but I've never given it to her to read. So this is the first year she's been able to participate in the conversation. Apparently, I bring it up all the time. So,
but also like the themes are kind of overlap with Henrietta Lacks. So,
yeah, they definitely overlap a lot. But I still think they're both worth a read. Different in that Henrietta Lacks is more about like the medical system, I would say, and like what do we owe the people that medical discoveries are created from, whereas like Radium Girls is more about corporations and what do they owe their employees.
And as horrifying as some of the stuff in Henrietta Lacks is, there isn't this sort of this injustice in what specifically happens like to her in her life. Like she's really, really ill and they're able to find out information because of what they're able to do with her cells. But these women were healthy women that were poisoned knowingly by a company so they could make money. So just, again, not to like say, oh, well, Henrietta had it easy, you know, but it's a different type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, I will say with Henrietta, there is that race thing because like Black women were not getting the treatment they should get. And that's like the horrific part. But yes, like Emily puts it well, like she was dead when the cells got taken. It's really more about the ethics of that. Whereas like, yes, the women were alive when this was all happening.
The women were alive and there were more and more and more of them, and none of them were being listened to, and it kept happening. And even when women were dying, like new women were being poisoned and dying, and then new women were being poisoned and dying. Like this, and again, it wasn't like, oh, this person was already ill and not being treated right. Like they were being made ill and not treated right.
Yes. And I just, the other thing I just want to say, like, I remember, don't they apply the radium to their lips to make them glow as lipstick? Yeah.
They like put it on because there's like a bunch of extra radium dust everywhere, and they're kind of like it's on their dresses and on their hair, and that's why they're the Radium Girls, because they would like go out on the town like flapper girls, you know, but they're glowing. And isn't that so fun?
Reading that like as a modern reader is so crazy. You're just like, let's bathe in radium. It's like it'd be like, oh, let's break open our old mercury thermometers and paint ourselves in mercury.
But like in the background of it all, what's also insane is that they keep talking about like when is the first time that somebody somewhere did the science and was like, actually radium is really really dangerous and really, like destructive to the human body. So like when was that officially known, even if it wasn't widely known? And then when, like, what were people doing at concurrently? And the idea that like there was medical science on the books that was published, it wasn't like in someone's private lab, like this was published that this is bad for you. And at the same time, forget the radium, well, don't forget the radium girls, but forget the radium girls, like companies were again like putting it in like tonics and selling it and saying radium is great for you, brush your teeth with it. Like that was allowed to, again, like you're right, like the Food and Drug Administration, like the idea that like they're not allowed to put radium in your food anymore like, because there's a scientist that says this will kill you. Yay.
Oh, well, yeah. If only that. Just a few women had to die. Yeah, anyway, it's a great feminine rage book. I probably have some more medical feminine rage books for you in the future. So something to look forward to. I guess that's like mostly the feminine rage I read. Like I gave you Invisible Woman 3 years ago, right?
Which one?
Invisible Woman? Did I give that to you 3 years ago?
That was not there was no body horror in that.
No body horror in that one, but perhaps one of the most angering reads. So they're all they're all just like angering nonfiction.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Anyway, cool. What's the next one we should talk about?
Well, the next
Bye,
one.
Radium Girl. Let's talk about something happier. Well, depending which
book happier.
Well, I don't know. It depends.
You didn't really pick happy books.
So, I gave you a George R. R. Martin.
You did.
Once again, How the Turntables.
And Lisa Tuttle. Let's not the women be forgotten.
And Lisa Tuttle. Have you read any Lisa Tuttle?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I haven't either. Well, we can talk about that later. I want to talk about that little thing. Are you going to read the note?
There's loud sirens out.
Well, I'll monologue. I read Windhaven this year, and I'm obsessed with it. It probably will be my book of the year. This is like great. This is like moments before disaster. Yeah, I think that's mostly what I said on my note.
You just said once again How the Turntables. I loved this novel. I read it in 2 days. I loved the main character and felt the story had a lot of interesting elements.
Great. How did we feel?
I really liked it.
What?
I really liked it.
Oh, good.
It reminded me more though. So like going obviously George R. R. Martin. So that's the mindset.
Yeah.
But it much more so reminded me of Robin Hobb.
Oh, for sure. It feels like something Robin Hobb could have written.
This feels like the most Robin Hobb book I've ever read that's not written by Robin Hobb.
Totally.
And I know he and her are friends. So like when reading this, I was like, because there's things in The Realm of the Elderlings and I mean like in The Song of Ice and Fire, those two like big series where if you know that they're friends, you're like, oh yeah, they're kind of like interested in some similar stuff. Not just, oh, it's fantasy, but like warging and the wit, like there's some like similar kind of stuff going on. But yeah, reading this, I was like, oh yeah, George is like channeling his friend Robin here.
Yeah, and it's funny. The reason I brought that up, I'm so relieved you liked it because I just love it so much. I feel like it also was very George. So like, I'm curious to read Lisa Tuttle and see where her influence came in. Because if you had told me this book was only written by George R. R. Martin, I could believe it.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about that.
Maybe she's the one that made it feel extra hobby.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm curious about that. So what's a star rating? How much did you like it?
For sure. And like over 4. I don't know if I would fully over 5, but like maybe.
Yay.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yay.
I mean, I really like it. I think partly because I had just finished Radium Girls. So having just read Radium Girls, any single thing that I would read after that, I'd be like, how dare you complain? You don't know suffering. You don't understand what it's like. Okay, your life is fine. So there was honestly a little bit of that going on. But and then there like towards this is why it also reminded me of Robin Hobb, because like Robin Hobb will do this and I'll be like, this is upsetting me, but I think it's supposed to. So then I'm like, I think I'm supposed to, I can't be mad at it. I should be praising it for this, because the main character really like annoyed me, but not in the way of like, oh, you're bad at writing characters and this character is an annoying character, but like she was making decisions that were so frustrating.
Yes.
And like really, really like in that sense, like really irritated me. And I felt
especially in book 2
for her.
For me. I was like so irritated. I guess we probably don't want to do spoilers, but the whole story of like this, like the new people to the wings versus the old people, like really forced me to examine like stuff in the real world, I feel like, because her name's Miriam, right? No, Marion. I know, it's like left my head. It's like the favorite book I've read this year.
I just put it up there.
Marion.
Okay, no names on the back, so helpful.
Oh, great.
Maris.
Okay.
Maris, yeah.
I have such a bad character name. And by the way, I gave Liene the best possible cover, which is sad. Like that's so ugly, and that is the best possible one. I felt like this would have been a bad. Let's see if I can get it to focus on that.
But I do kind of like the old schoolness of it, but the dinosaur, I
just like, here's the thing. I love this book so much, and I've never felt like this cover does not really give you the sense at all of what this is actually about.
But I love how kind of retro and weird it is.
I do love this. I picked it up at Half Price Books, and I am extremely fond of it, other than like,
I would say neither of these covers gives you a sense of what the book's gonna be like, but your cover you're holding up at least gets your attention.
It has personality.
Like, what is this? This one you wouldn't look at twice.
Well, here's the thing. So I'm trying to read all of George's other works this year. So I've read like 4 of them.
Okay, but maybe you shouldn't, because bad things have happened when you've done that.
Well, I know we did talk about that. I'll leave a couple things unread.
Okay.
Just like to keep it so that no information comes out.
Yeah. It's like throwing salt over your shoulder, you just like
I'll leave a few things uncovered. All of his covers are horrible. And it's just like, Martin is one of the most famous living fantasy authors today. One of the best-selling fantasy authors that's still alive today. And you cannot.
Well, I like the new mass markets for A Song of Ice and Fire.
A Song of Ice and Fire has great covers, but I'm talking about all of his other work, is what I'm saying. Like all of his other work, like you can't spend like $20.
You would think as
cover art
marketing mindset that they would, as deceptive as it would be, that they would make all the covers of his other books look very A Song of Ice and Fire.
They have. Wait, no, but this is my complaint. Wait, we're going to go on a little side tangent. So I just finished Tough Voyaging. Look at how deceptive this is. They literally do Game of Thrones, and then they put a space helmet to be like, but this is Game of Thrones in space.
Yeah. But again, like that's a better cover than this one.
It is, except like it's not a Game of Thrones in space.
No.
So people are going to pick this up. Actually, I put a picture of this and someone said, "Oh, which Game of Thrones book is that?" And I said, "It's not."
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not about the book.
I can't wait for the crossover.
Did I curse?
I can't wait for the crossover when they release A Song of Ice and Fire covers that are Twilight inspired with the black and white and red.
You know what? Sure. Why not?
That would actually be kind of fire.
I can say this on a Liene Live because we both were giant fans. But I did indeed curse Neil Gaiman. I finished the last book in his like 35 book bibliography. What was it, like a month and a half before the Neil Gaiman news broke? Yep. So that was super fun. That's why Liene doesn't want me to finish George R.R. Martin's work.
Don't do it.
Anyway, the thing about Windhaven that was so surprising to me was I loved Maris, actually. I loved her as a character. Like, yes, she frustrated me a ton. I just thought she was so well written.
Yeah.
And I
love
like
the Hob thing, because like Hob characters are really well written, but then you're like, oh, why are you doing this?
Frustrating. I just thought it was really interesting, like particularly because at the end, I think one of the characters is like, you did this for you, and you never thought to think about what it would mean for everybody else. And it was just like such an interesting through line because I think she really does try to help society later. But like the ultimate thing is like she was only ever thinking of herself and what that means for that one guy that I literally hate so bad in the story. What's his name?
The guy that's like the rebel that
One Wing. We'll just call him One Wing.
Yeah.
I loved him as a character too because I hated him so much.
The whole
But like
time?
Maris, the
You
whole
never came around on him?
I mean, like maybe. Why? Do you love him? He's so
I feel like
obnoxious.
there's like some Jaime Lannister DNA where he's like this character that you initially are primed to hate. And then the more you learn about his position on stuff, you're like, oh, like from his perspective, actually, I kind of get it.
I definitely felt that about him. It was like loved how Maris had to reckon with him because he's so obnoxious that you just want to be like, stop listening to him. But that she's able to overcome that and be like, yeah, like you said, from his history and his past and what he's saying is right, even if he is going about it the most impossible way to get people to his side.
Yeah.
And like just the complexities the book goes into of like, sometimes people are right, but they're so dislikable. And like, how likable do you need to be if you're right? And like how Maris is able to bridge the gap. I don't know. I just really thought it was a fascinating look.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of just in a obviously much bigger, like grander way, but it's a lot of like stuff that you see in the workplace and stuff where someone can be correct that someone in the workplace or some partner of the company or someone that like you kind of need to be nice to, even though they're not maybe nice or not pleasant, or it's not a company you'd really want to work with, but you kind of have to. The person who is morally correct, who's like, they're terrible and I don't like, they don't deserve me to be nice to them. I'd be like, I agree with you, but you're making your own life more difficult by not just sucking it up and just being nice, because that's how we get through this whole thing and we can all move on.
Yeah, and it's like interesting to talk about those little things. So I definitely have had that in my workplace too. I remember the first job I got out of college, I was working with this woman who was like a huge mentor of mine. I really looked up to her, but like she just would get so impatient with people and she'd get so frustrated because they would say no to her and then I would go and convince these coworkers to do it our way. And I'm just like, here's the thing, you just can't have an ego about it. Like I'd go in and be like, oh, I don't know if I'm wrong, but I think this is like maybe the way we need to do it. And then they'd be like, oh, I guess you're right. And yeah, was
Make
that
them think it's their idea.
Yes. And like, was that annoying? Yes. But did I get what I wanted? Also, yes.
Yeah.
So, but like broadly in a societal way, like that is a huge conversation with things like,
but like when Maris is trying to convince him of that in those conversations, like this is me at work telling, like as like talking to somebody in the workplace who's frustrated and me being like, okay, but listen, you're not going to get what you want. You're not going to get the result you're looking for if you keep this up.
yeah, that's like in the book Crucial Conversations, which I read actually at that job as a part of that job. And that like taught me a lot. But it's like in societal questions too, like that is a big question about things like Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. Like this push and pull of like, well, we have been so disrespected in societal racism, systemic, that's what I'm thinking of, systemic racism, like
Both
we deserve to be like angry. And it's like, yes. And then there's this other side, it's like, but is that achieving your goals? And like that push and pull. Yeah. And like, I'm not coming here to say either one, but that is
but that's the conversation that this book is basically having through those characters, is saying here, like, here's one is pitching the moral correctness of their position and the other is pitching a practical approach to getting things done, and it's not really framing either of them as being completely correct, because like Maris is also, because like when he's telling her that she's her position is disregarding the truth of what he's experienced or what people like him have experienced, and then how can she say that? And there's a lot of things that she's kind of blind to, not just like his stuff, but in general. So she's not pitched as like the character who's like, well, she's clearly the correct person who has got the right idea, and she is the one pitching like pragmatism, except for when she doesn't, when she's got her feelings, now we're not being pragmatic, and it's like, oh, how the turntables.
Yeah, and it's like, this is the book I'm talking about, because one thing we do have in common is we both hate over explanation, which is like why I think we both had huge problems with Becky Chambers in A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet or
More
whatever.
problems than over explanation. We need
Well,
not
there was a lot
to-
of problems, but like that was one of the problems. And like we talked about that in Blood Over Bright Haven, and like some of these books that like, oh, have a good maybe core, but just
Mhm.
are so unsubtle. This is what I'm going to point to because it has so much interest. And like you said, it never really makes a full-on statement about it.
Yeah.
Like it's like, here's Maris and here's One Wing and here's these people, and they're all going to explain their experiences, and no one's going to be framed as fully right or wrong. And then the narrative's going to end, and you kind of have to figure out what you think about it.
Yeah. The situation is the teacher, not the individual character.
Yes. And like about caste systems too. It brings up like a lot about that.
Yeah.
In a very complicated way, because I'm not still sure how I feel about it.
Because like when they're having these conversations, right, about like how, you know, whether we're going to shake things up and do things differently, on the face of it, you're like, well, yeah, what she's saying they should do instead, yes, that's the fair way to do it. That would be correct. That's the right thing to do. And then the entirely emotional argument that it actually like feels valid is when they're like, yeah, but if for all these years this has been like a familial like heritage that you expect that like you can pass on to your kids, and you have like legacy tied up with it, and you whatever, like that you would feel some kind of way about that, to take that away from it isn't maybe necessarily a wholly good thing. Or, you know, is it something you need to just suck it up and move on because it should never have been a heritage thing. But like the way that they would feel that, you know, because people will we'll talk about that when it comes to all kinds of inheritance, and, you know, like should you be able to inherit anything ever, you know, like is that fair? And like, I mean, I guess no, right? Because that means that you inherit stuff that someone else couldn't inherit, and that's not fair. So that it like has that conversation in a way that doesn't immediately like, again, pitch one side as correct and the other as wrong. Like it's an argument that you, when you hear it, you're like, yeah, it's not an easy like, well, this is correct, just change it. It's not that simple.
Yeah, and what's interesting especially is that for people who haven't read the novel, it's 3 novellas that are put together, which is like, and they were written at different times, I'm pretty sure. And so it's like the first novella at the end, it's pretty like triumphant, but then to go into the second one and actually see the consequences of what she did, because you're like, yes, a school is the fairest way.
Well, I thought that I thought the end point of this whole thing might be a school, and when we got there so fast, I was like, "Oh no, things are gonna go badly."
Because I feel like normally that would be the end of a book. Yeah. Like, oh, it's going to be a school, and we're going to teach everybody, and then it'll be fair. And then it gets to the school, and it's like, but actually, they don't have money, and no one wants to donate anything, and everyone's self-serving. So actually, no.
Yep, and it kind of has like a conversation about. It's not a one-to-one, but it's a little bit like affirmative action, where the like people again who have not inherited this, you know, that like, okay, so if it's free to everybody, yeah, but the people who were going to inherit this have a leg up on everybody else because they have already been training for this, whereas people who are now newly eligible for this, you know, don't have the training for it. But maybe they would be better if they'd had the training, but they don't have the training. So how do we, but they'll never get the training if we like, don't like, give like, you know, like, they're like, how do we bridge the gap between how it was and how we want it to be? Like,
well, and I love too, how like the characters never act the way you want them to narratively. Like, Maris's protege, well, her protege in the second part, again, I just like the names aren't there. Whatever her name is. You know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
Oh, Sorella. Like she also doesn't act the way I want. Like you want her to be like, Maris, you've done so much for me. But instead she's like her own person, who's kind of in between worlds too. I don't know. I just felt like everything was so masterful in the way that it challenges you at every turn to question like regular narratives as well.
Yeah. Well, and just like with Robin Hobb books and also George R. R. Martin books, I feel like two kinds of like bad writing that get this wrong. One is where they put in lots of like mundane detail because they hear books like this praised for having mundane detail, and they're like, oh, mundane detail, that makes a thing good. And you're like, okay, not just having it, versus and then also books that just don't have any mundane detail because they're like, oh, that's boring, we need to have only the action, only the excitement, only the mystery, and that's also bad. So like this book, and a lot of Robin Hobb books and a lot of George R. R. Martin books, they're so long because there's a lot of time spent on pretty like day-to-day things, the things that these characters are actually dealing with, and like the reality that makes them who they are and makes them make the decisions they want to make. And that those are like weighty decisions for the individual. So when you look at it from this like stepped back, you're like, well, this is an adventure story, you're like, oh, what you're making for breakfast, like that's boring, that's not interesting. But like what you're gonna have for breakfast is like a big decision for you personally. And so then if you're doing it right, then those decisions, like there's a kind of a lot of like the stakes in this are pretty low. Like I guess their whole world is kind of small, there's not a lot of people, and so like the stakes of what they're talking about is like who has the right to like fly around and be a courier. It's like the stakes of this whole thing. It's like, I mean, like when we're talking, this isn't Star Wars, it's very low stakes. And then the day-to-day of that, like, okay, if that's like as high as this goes, that's like the big picture here is like, that's already not that huge. And then the day-to-day of like dealing with the wings and the arguments about who has access to the wings and about like the legalities of that and who has the right to this and the individual people and how they personally feel about it, either how they really love it or really hate it or feel neutrally about it, or how they do get along or they don't get along, or like one is like probably too drunk to be flying but he's inherited it, and like there's just like all this little stuff. And it's like if you're doing it right, that's what makes this actually really compelling to read. Because if you did just tell a story about some people fighting over the right to be couriers and you didn't include the day-to-day stuff, you'd be like, well, why would I care about this story?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I didn't even think about how small scale the story really is, because the narrative does such a good job of making it seem like life or death, because to Maris it is.
Like just the beginning with like when they're kids and it's like the boy who's like by blood supposed to inherit this and does not want it, and she by blood would not inherit this but she does want it and is suited for it, and that whole like drama that unfolds to do with that felt, I mean, again, it's so like with something like that would happen to Fist Chivalry, like where you just feel these kids who are kind of powerless fighting the injustice of the situation, where again the stakes here are you don't get to sing songs, you don't get to be a courier, but it's like that's your whole life, like that is the course of the rest of their lives, that's not little to them, and so like it feels huge if you're invested in them.
Such a good point. Like I actually never even thought about that, because it does so well, it just does convince you that it is the biggest deal ever. Yeah, that's really interesting actually. I'm just thinking about it.
But then I feel like worse books will have something that's actually like a big deal happening to characters, and I'll be like, I don't really care, because you haven't like convinced me to care about this too.
Let's see. Are you saying that By Blood, by Salt is over-explaining or isn't, Pete? If you're still here, let me know, because I am going to be reading By Blood, by Salt for SPFBO Champions League. And this actually isn't the kind of over-explaining we're talking about. We're talking about over-explaining like thematic elements.
Motivations, like, things like that.
Yeah, and telling you how you should think.
Oh yeah, so when you said it, I was gonna say, and I don't think I did, that like Blood Over Brighthaven, like I hadn't thought to compare it to that. But yeah, for sure, this has not obviously the exact same conversation, but some of the similar themes are present here. And again, they're handled in a way that kind of just shows you the complexity and nuance and multifaceted mess of that and lets you kind of sit with the discomfort of that. Whereas Blood Over Brighthaven is very like, and here this character is going to tell you why this is wrong and this is right. And you're like,
yeah, it's the when a character has to like say it out loud is when you lose me a bit, because you aren't allowing the reader to, like you said, sit in the hard and sit with like, well, but I like this character, and what are they saying about that? And that's what Windhaven does so well, because like I said, with One Wing, you just like everything he says just gets on my nerves. But then it's like, oh, it's like the worst when your worst enemy has a good point and it's just devastating. That is like all of book 2 of Windhaven.
Yeah. But I mean, so like characters can absolutely grandstand what they personally feel. It's just, I feel like a worse book makes them grandstand about what the author personally feels versus how this. So like, I feel like Lisa Tuttle and George R. R. Martin, they feel certain pieces of what these characters are saying, they would say that that's their position on it, but not the whole of it, what any one character would say or think. And so then instead, like a worse book has this characters, like this entire position is entirely the author's position, versus there's like pieces that are here and there that like the author would be like, yeah, like that's something that I agree with, but this character isn't like my avatar for the correct opinion. Like they say some stuff that they feel passionately about, and some of it I probably feel passionately about too, but they say other stuff that's not correct. And there's other characters that also say the things that I would also agree with and think passionately about. It's dispersed.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, like Wind and Truth, like that was my complaint about Wind and Truth, is that like Sanderson fell into that trap. Like he did over explain feelings, and I was like, I didn't like it. And he hasn't really done that a ton in the past. Yeah, and I think also like obviously authors are entitled to have their stories say something. Like some of the best works are saying something, but it's about saying it subtly. It's about having a narrative that leads your reader to that conclusion naturally, rather than having to tell them what the conclusion is because you're worried they'll miss it. Like when I think of, I'm trying to think of like books. I mean, even, you know what? A Song of Ice and Fire does a great job of that. But also, actually, first of all, let's talk about Joe Abercrombie. Like, we've talked a lot like, oh, the real villain in Joe Abercrombie novels is capitalism. But it's like, it lulls you into that. Like, it's by at the 10th book where you're like, oh, was the real villain the capitalism we made along the way? Like, he never has a character come out and be like, maybe we shouldn't have done this. Like, he doesn't need to, because the narrative is leading the reader there.
Yeah.
But you can still come away and not get that.
Yeah, I usually use like a food metaphor where, a good diet, right, is nutritionally robust, but it's just, you're just eating a complete meal. And like, it has all of the different pieces of it that you need. You've got all the vitamins and nutrients and macronutrients, whatever, on your plate. And it's like, this is a good meal, versus a meal that's like nutritionally deficient, but we stuck a vitamin in it, and you're like crunching on the vitamin, and you're like, I mean, I'm getting the nutrients, but I don't enjoy this delivery mechanism.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, no. Yes, good books lead you to the window, but ask you to look through it. I really like how you phrase that. How much of George R. R. Martin's stuff have you read that's not A Song of Ice and Fire?
I started reading Dying of the Light, but I never finished it. Not because it was bad. It was just like a commute book, and that was not a good commute book.
Nope, absolutely not.
That's why I was like, I mean, like, this is good, but like, I don't think I should keep reading this as a commute book. And then, yeah, just The Song of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood, Night of Seven Kingdoms, and now this.
Windhaven and then the Ice Dragon,
yeah,
which I gave you last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I will say, like, this was the first one I read other than Ice Dragon that was non Song of Ice and Fire. And it was just like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the best experience of my life. Nothing else has lived up to this. So I just want to say that, like, there's been like, I've had varying success. Like, nothing's been bad. I don't think you could write something bad, but like Dying of the Light, it was like, it had a lot of problems. It was like, yeah, it's fine. Tough Voyaging. Actually, I liked Tough Voyaging. But anyway, I just want to say, like, so far, this is like pinnacle.
It was really good. But I also get like, I think, maybe was it the Goodreads like rating average or something is giving me the impression that this isn't like universally liked.
No, it's really low actually. Yeah. And I'm here to just be like the one person to spread the good word of Windhaven. I feel
like if people are picking it up because they want Storm of Swords, then they're not going to like it. But if they're picking it up because they want Fitz Chivalry Farseer and the Madge and like Live Ship Traders, then they will like, I would give this to a Robin Hobb fan before I gave it to A Song of Ice and Fire fan.
Absolutely. And like when I went and read most of the negative reviews, like you hit the nail on the head. It was like, I read A Song of Ice and Fire and I thought all of George's other works would be A Song of Ice and Fire. And this isn't. And I think I just went in with like a much more open mind because I just didn't know what to expect from his earlier works. But I am going to be the champion. I actually am going to bring this to me with Worldcon because my one goal is to like track down George R. R. Martin. And my thought being like, maybe he'll want to talk to me if I go Windhaven first. Like, how many people is he getting that are coming and being like, let's talk about Windhaven?
I also think this would be a really good adaptation. And it would be like fantasy without being it's unique enough and distinct enough from Song of Ice and Fire, where I mean a bad adaptation would try to make it a Song of Ice and Fire. But if you had a good adaptation of it that tried to, have this shine in the best light possible, I think it would be a very quietly compelling like miniseries or something.
Totally. I think it would work great as a miniseries, and like an Andor miniseries where they do like 3-episode arcs. So you have like 3 episodes for book 1, 3 episodes for book 2, like 4 episodes for book 3 or whatever. It could just be like a season. Let's see.
And I think it would be because it's not,
you cannot bring Windhaven. You can't. You can't. This is my thing. But I read it first. Absolutely
it wouldn't be like it doesn't have the grand sweeping battles and dragons and stuff. But I think because of all the flying around, then it would be visually interesting enough, and like all the little islands. So I think like from the, but is this cinematic perspective? It is, just in an extremely different way, which is why it would be like, again, visually distinctive, so that if you saw clips from it or trailers of it, you wouldn't be like, oh, which of the million fantasy shows is this? It would be like immediately like, oh, that's Windhaven.
Yeah, and I think especially like in the second book, they have all that competition. They could play that up a ton to make it like exciting for viewers. Yeah, that's actually like a good point. It would make a great adaptation, but
or if you like animated it kind of in the style of the Spider-Man,
I was gonna say whatever. I'm usually like annoyed that everyone wants every fantasy adaptation to be animated, because like, let's do it. This one I actually think would work incredibly well animated.
Or the way Arcane is animated.
Yeah, like Arcane, or even I could see even like an airier type of animation.
Honestly, what made me think that this should be animated was because when I was thinking about how on screen all the flying around and all because it's not flying like Peter Pan, there's like a lot of contraption like maneuvering, and what it most immediately made me think of was Attack on Titan, and how they have to use those contraptions to like basically, I mean, they're not flying, they're like swinging around, but like basically flying around, and how visually interesting it is how they animate that, and how much like easier than physically doing that with like actors on a green screen it would be to animate that and still like look really, really cool.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, I mean, the first thing I thought of was actually like Kiki's Delivery Service. I was thinking of like, have you seen Kiki's yet?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I can never remember which one you have and haven't, but I was thinking of like her little sea town. So I was thinking like very airy, but obviously be a very serious thing. So Wingfeather, I actually have seen some animation. I feel like that's too like choppy of animation. I feel like this would be like smooth animation, which I think is why like when I picture this as animation, Into the Spider-Verse is like probably one of the coolest animation things I've ever seen. But it is like that very like in your face, like kind of pow. And I feel like this would need to be more like smooth in my head. I don't know. But I just think this needs to have a resurgence.
I mean, when you say resurgence, it makes it sound like it had a moment. Did it ever have a moment?
I don't think it did. It's such a good point. So we'll start the moment then. I realized, so the first one was published in 1975. So it's 1975, and then 1980, 81 is when it got put all together.
Oh, like the different, like for the first like bind up.
The first bind up of all three. And I'd learned on the last live I did about Windhaven that George R. R. Martin and Lisa Tuttle dated.
Wow,
so, that was an interesting piece of trivia. The only thing I wonder if Lisa Tuttle did is like, this is the first of all the George R. R. Martins I've read. So all of A Song of Ice and Fire, Fire and Blood, Night of the Seven Kingdoms, Tough Voyaging, Dying of the Light, Windhaven, and Night Flyers, and Ice Dragon.
You passed the quiz.
What?
You passed the quiz.
I passed the quiz. Like, I've read some George Martin. This is the only one that doesn't have a body description of a woman. Like, it's the only one that doesn't talk about that. And so I'm convinced that's Lisa Tuttle. I'm convinced she was like, nah.
In general, I mean, like, yeah, I'm a defender of George R. R. Martin's when it comes to him writing women. I'm not at every scene. There are some scenes where I'm just like, not that one.
I mean, I made a whole video about like defending it, because I came from like, I didn't read it because of that. And then I read it and was like, okay, everyone's putting a lot on this that isn't actually there.
But like, I mean, not just like scenes of like violence or something against women. But like people, I think I've heard the takes that he doesn't write women well, that like as characters, like that he's not good at writing women, and that's
That
where
is
I'm
the
like,
worst. Who's
there's
saying that?
scenes,
That's
yeah,
literally the worst take I've ever heard in my entire life. Who is saying
but
that?
people like but I was gonna say, but that being said, so like I defend him when it comes to writing women, and I've often like said like books that are like, oh, this is like if you wanted Game of Thrones but make it feminist, this would be it. And I'm just like, ew, gross. No, Game of Thrones is actually legitimately more feminist than this. But what I'm gonna say though is that this did like this female character, that's why like it felt more Hob like, because like the as good as he is at writing women, and I do think he is good at writing women, this was just like that little extra bit of like there was a woman involved with this. Like a woman wrote some of this.
I just want to say, hi, Kyle. You're going to see that she loved Windhaven, so thank goodness. But I totally agree, because I always say, like, when I did my first review, like, there was some stuff in Game of Thrones when I read the first book that, like, yeah, I kind of was like, I just don't think that was necessary. I don't think, like, these descriptions of Dany and stuff like that were necessary. But the female characters themselves are some of the best I've ever read. Like, they are so full. So first of all, whoever's saying he doesn't write good female characters, dumb. But I think that's why, though, it's like the lack of the body stuff in this is like,
or just like little things where like, as again, I think he's good at writing women, to be clear. Yes. But there's just like little things where the way that Maris would forget body stuff, just like how she would kind of internalize a moment, and it just had that little extra something of like, yes, like this is the experience of like, yeah, like a woman doesn't have to imagine what it might be like to have experienced that. Like
totally. Yeah, that's where I feel. And that's why I want to pick up like a Lisa Tuttle, like maybe her most famous book or something, just to kind of see what that's about. But just to be clear, if anyone's here, like that is a wrong take if you say George R. R. Martin isn't good at writing women. Yes. It's a bad take, it's a wrong take. You can't be here.
Yeah. You can say he's imperfect, sure.
Here's the thing, like if someone was pitching a book to me, it's like George R. R. Martin, except feminist, that would to me be like all of those books I've been forced to read that say the new Madeline Miller.
Oh yeah.
That's how that feels to me.
Well,
like, this book is going to be terrible.
I remember this being the discourse too, not about books, but when Outlander, the show, was first starting to air, and how they were like, oh, this is the primetime premium cable, answer to feminine answer to Game of Thrones, because it's also, like a high budget fantasy show that airs on primetime on
Doesn't Outlander have the most sexual assault per second of like any TV show?
For again, aside from that, which also true, but aside from that, I just think like the female characters are not well written in Outlander, whereas they are well written in Game of Thrones. So I mean, not season 8 Game of Thrones, but season 8 hadn't come out yet when
George R. R. Martin
about Outlander. So
George R. R. Martin didn't write season 8, so that's not on him.
No, but if it was like about these shows and about how Game of Thrones is like this like guys show, and how Outlander is like the feminist like answer to that, it's like no.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, like, yes, that scene is gross. And yes, do I ever want to hear the term Myrish Swamp like ever again in my life? No. But I will defend the concept of the scene with my life, because I think like thematically that scene means a lot for Cersei's character. That's all I have to say about that. I don't know if he agrees or not.
Again, it's usually like specific words. It's not even like whole scenes that he writes. It's just like the whole scene is fine, but then we also said this one word in the scene where I'm like, didn't need that word. Didn't need that word.
Exactly right.
Yes, the milk fascination is also what I'm thinking of, where I'm like, nope, that didn't need to be there.
Fine. There's something we need to ignore in all of our favorite books. It's just like, and that's the thing I ignore in them.
Is it time for me to break out my Patrick Rothfuss quote that I keep handy like a gunslinger?
Yes, I know exactly which quote you're talking about. Tell the audience.
To love something because is easy. It's like putting a penny in your pocket. But to love something despite, to know the flaws and love them too, that is rare and pure and perfect.
So you heard it here first. Rare, pure, and perfect. Good. I'm glad you like Windhaven. I like everyone who I've read it in my circle recently of like booktubers have all loved it. So I'm like, we can start, I guess, the first popularity thing on Windhaven, starting here. And if it gets famous, you heard it here first, like George R. R. Martin owes us his career. if it gets famous.
But also, as much as fantasy fans complain that nothing is ever a standalone and everything is a series, fantasy fans lie. Because even if this takes off, because it's a standalone, it can't like have this, here's how far I'm in the series, here's the reading order, you know, like wait till you get to book 10. You know, it's just the one and done. You're like, well, I read it and it was great. And
they broke up, so they're not going to keep writing it.
yeah. Whereas like with, you know, with the Cosmere, with the Wheel of Time, with the Realm of the Elderlings, you're on, you know, book 50,000 and the interconnected, you know.
Yep. This is it. Although sci-fi? Do you think it's sci-fi or fantasy?
Fantasy.
I feel like there's like a sci-fantasy quality to it, where it's like a little
I mean,
like
it's
Star
very low
Wars.
fantasy. So like I feel like with very, very low fantasy, I feel like you could always say that it's sci-fi because you could easily see like, oh, well, in a different planet that has a similar physics as ours, this could be taking place.
I guess that's true. So it's like it's low fantasy. Sorry, I'm just trying to think. I always kind of thought it more sci-fi, but I guess you're right. Spaceships don't always make it sci-fi. I don't know. I'd be curious to see how they classify it online. World is sci-fi, story is fantasy. That feels correct. Right, it's kind of more of a fantasy. Anyway, yay! There was we started with 2 high-ranked books. So where we go from here, doesn't matter. We're good.
Matter. Yeah, that's right. We can just end the live here. Good night, everybody.
Oh, should we?
Let's stay friends.
Well, let's go to Snow Child, which I guess you have to do a ranking of the kids' book too. I don't know if you have that with you.
Oh, yes, I do.
Had you ever read that before?
I had seen there's a series that they used to air on PBS. It was Mikhail Baryshnikov's Stories from My Childhood, and there was like one of the installments was this story. So like I had like seen the story, but I hadn't read.
It was kind of sad because I had to give you, first of all, that thrift book. I had to buy it off Thrift Books, and then the sticker wouldn't come off, which was devastating. I like kept trying to peel it off, but it's out of print. I
like the story. I think that Mikhail Baryshnikov like thing. I think it's like available on YouTube or whatever. It's like,
oh, is it? I have to go look at it because it's but it's out of print, so like I couldn't buy a new version. I was like hoping for like a hardback, and it's just like, oh, it's just not in print. So like the one I own from the 90s. So I don't know why I was so obsessed with that story as a kid.
Very, like melancholic.
Yeah, it's like kind of melancholic, and it's I don't know. I was never like, I didn't like children. So like I never babysat or anything. Like so it's also
like, as a child, I despised myself.
I despised myself, but like I liked it even as like an older child, and like I never wanted to babysit. I just like was not into babies. So it's kind of also weird for me because it's a story about wanting children, like essentially. But I like it, and I still like it.
I mean, it keeps company with stories like Thumbelina, where like she wishes for a little girl and gets a very little girl.
It's a folktale, right? It's like it's a folktale basically. So yeah, and so then I read this, and I only read it because I was like, oh, it's based on that version of the children's story. So, well, I guess what I'll say is the children's story is a couple can't have a baby. So they fashion a girl snowman who comes to life, but then when winter's over, she melts, and it's sad, but then next winter she comes back to them.
But aren't there like different versions, like ones where she does like leave, like she melts forever, and ones where she comes back again and again, and ones where she melts because they keep her, and ones where she melts because she falls in love? Like there's like different, like there's multiple endings for the story.
It's just like any fairy tale where like it's been retold so many times and like in so many cultures that I think there's tons of versions. So like the Snow Child novel is like a different version, obviously, than the story.
Yeah, but I mean, like even like this one is like choosing a particular kind of way to end it. But like the original, like the story that this is based on, like there's, and I think it alludes to that also in here, that there's like multiple versions of that like fairy tale.
And you can choose, I guess, what story you like.
Choose your own adventure.
Choose your adventure. So what'd
I
you
can
think
read
of it?
your note, but you basically just said that, so I initially chose to read this book because it was based off a children's book that was my fave as a kid. It looks like that children's book may be out of print. So secondhand. I like the exploration of grief and growing up in a fairy tale like story.
So what'd you think?
I have a big and specific problem with it.
Okay, I wonder if it's the one I was expecting you to have. Let's see.
And what were you expecting?
Well, no, I want to hear it first. I'll tell you if I'm right or wrong.
Well, I want to maybe have a second problem because you're going to say something like, "Oh, you're right, actually."
Well, the one thing that bothered me is like sometimes the description of her as a female and like her growing up in a female body, and I don't know how to explain it, but just like the aspects of how like sex and growing up were used sometimes got on my nerves. Like as beautiful as I found the story and the grief, like sometimes I didn't like that part of the novel and like her romance.
I mean, I didn't find her romance very compelling, but like,
no, it's not compelling at all. It's about like the writing that I like. No, it's like that part I just felt like I had to lean into it being a fairy tale. And like in Snow White, you don't like Prince Charming doesn't have a name, or is that in Cinderella? Like, okay, I just have to accept that he's not a character. He's just a plot device.
But like, okay, so what you just said is like getting into the problem that I have with this book, and that is that I felt like it was punishing characters in the narrative for using fairy tale logic and punishing characters in the narrative for not using fairy tale logic. And I was like, what is your point? Like, you can't punish them for both. Like she would be like, oh, well, she's a snow child. And so we have to like, that's why like that we have to think of her that way. And it's not real. It's like magical realism. And like, that's why this works. But then she gets punished for thinking that. But then when they treat her like a real person and they're like, because it's crazy to think she's a snow child, the narrative punishes that too. And I was just like, what is the metaphor? Like, what are we going for here? Like, what are we doing?
That's actually like a really interesting point that I didn't think of. Like, I guess I should put this about this book. I am not like incredibly emotionally attached to this book. I thought it was really beautiful and I enjoyed reading it.
You're emotionally attached to this book.
Yeah. So like any criticism of it, like it's just not going to really like bother me. So like that's super interesting because I never thought of it that way. But I wonder if that criticism is just like a different explanation of the stuff that bugged me and I just couldn't quite articulate it right.
I feel like when I'm reading a story, you're trying to like sort of learn the language of the world you're going to be in. And so like obviously when you're watching, the Vampire Diaries, when the kids are like telling the cops that, oh, it's a vampire that did this, and the cops are like, psh, that's ridiculous. In the world of this story, you, the audience, are like, the stupid cops, you gotta believe them, it's vampires, it's clearly vampires. Versus like a different kind of story where it's very real and like there's some like kids in the boonies that are like, we think vampires did it. But this type of a story is like, no, like that's people would come to think that, but no, we need to actually investigate this because it obviously isn't vampires, so we need to like do proper murder investigation. Like that's what this story is going to be. And like this one, I kept being like, okay, so what's this going to be? Is this going to be that she's really like kind of a fairy tale come to life, or that you shouldn't think of people as fairy tales and you should see them for who they are? Which one are we going with? And it kept like going between the two, and I kept being like, when in a scene where she's applying fairy tale logic, I'm like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be like, that's right, or I'm supposed to be like, no, that's bad. I'm like, I don't know. Is it good or bad? I don't know.
I can totally see that. Like, you would have been fine with it if it stuck the whole time with fairy tale logic.
Yeah, like, or not. Like, pick one.
Or said, we're making this fairy tale and it's real and we're going to keep real logic in. That makes sense.
Because like when like the again, like, well, she's like a snow child, right? So like she doesn't want to like stay the night, she doesn't want to be by the fire. When she's like feeling poorly, they're like, yeah, she needs to go back outside because like she needs to be out in the cold. And like it's kind of a little bit more than that for a good chunk of it. But then like the husband does know where this kid is hanging out and that she's not just like magically appearing. Like he knows who she is and where she came from and why she's in the woods, and he's still letting this happen. And you're like, well, that's kind of bad, unless she is a fairy tale. And so then it's good. But then when he's like getting mad at his wife, when he realizes that she thinks she's a fairy tale creature, and he's like, no, she's like a real kid that's like out there in the woods. That's insane that you would treat her like a fairy tale. Like, and you're like, that is insane. And you too, sir, that you have been permitting this. That is insane. But then they start treating her like a person, and she gets like sicklier and sicklier because they're like treating her like a real thing and not letting her be in the snow. And now they're like, oh, it's because we've done this to her. We've like caged this fairy tale thing. And I'm like, but I thought, what are we doing? What is happening?
I mean, maybe like it's I can't remember it specifically. Maybe it's just supposed to be like the push and pull of that from the dad and mom. But the thing I remember most about the novel is just like how it describes grief. I had a lot of friends going through like miscarriages at the time, and so like the beginning of the book was like I thought it was such a visceral way to like talk about that emotion, which is I think why the book hit so hard for me.
Yeah, the beginning part, and actually a lot of it, almost anything that wasn't to do with like the snow child. So like just her, like this isolation they're living in, because what are they in Alaska or something like that?
Yes.
How they come to be there, why they're there, how she's initially reticent about meeting anyone in the community, and then when she does start to make connections with the community, and the relationship like that they have with like the neighbor kid that ends up kind of like living with them for a while, and how they feel a kind of like familial relationship with him. I liked all of that. And I was like, this book should just be about some random people living in Alaska, because everything with the snow child is pissing me off.
I mean, that is funny because I just feel like my one problem is also the snow child. Sorry, my face is so red right now, like it's boiling in my office. Like, I don't know
because you're
what's
actually
happening.
dying inside that I didn't love this book. You're like, I'm telling her that it's fine, but it's what is
give
that like?
me
They're like,
something.
you have to tell them that you're fine, but actually,
Why is my face the color of my Captain America shield? Like, just like I'm not normally this like color. So it's funny. Like the only problem I had with the book too, when I docked low points, was like having to do with the snow child too. So maybe I agree with you. Maybe it was just like I was really into the story of the husband and wife.
Well, because like in The Bear and the Nightingale, which I picked for you, I feel like it does a good job of kind of picking what universe we're in, where like fairy tales are real and they're not always believed, but they like the position of this story, and the thing you should root for is for when people do take it seriously that fairy tales are real, because anytime they don't take it seriously, that's bad. So like you're like, okay, I know what we're doing here, but like imagine if in Bear and the Nightingale it was that, but then also anytime they treated fairy tales as real, that was also bad. Like, what is the story about?
I can't disagree with you. It's totally fair. Should we get to the main event? Because I don't feel like people care about Snow Child that much. Should we talk about Yumi and the
They would have cared
Night
if you would have been more upset about this and then fight.
Oh no, I actually wasn't sure how you were gonna feel about it. I'm guessing, what was it, like a 3 for you maybe?
I feel like if I rated things separately, because again, I thought it was atmospheric. I liked the, being in Alaska, learning how to rough it, like that like mundane detail we were talking about with Windhaven, where it's like baking pies, and I felt like I could like taste the pies, and she's like famous for her pies, and like just like the local rural town and the family that they get to know. Like I liked all that, and it was again very low stakes, very like day-to-day stuff. And it's because I had a book on my holds at the library by this author, and I took it off my holds after I finished this.
Okay, so that's like lower score.
Well, because it's like another thing where she's doing like a fairy tale, but like IRL. I think it's
I
in
never
Alaska.
even looked at her other stuff. I should. What book was it? I kind of want to look up.
The cover looks like this one, except it's like dark blue. It's like, and I think blue is in the title.
I don't know where my snow child is.
The blue, I think, is in the title, because it's supposed to be like Beauty and the Beast, I think, but it's like in Alaska, and it's like this, where it's like real, but like there's going to be weaving in some pieces of that fairy tale. And initially that sounded cool to me. And then having read this, I was like, well, I didn't like the fairy tale.
To the bright edge of the world?
No.
Black woods, blue sky?
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's new.
Yeah.
Oh, that came out this year.
Yeah, so like that's why I heard about it, because it just like popped up on like new releases, and I looked at the description and I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. I'll put that on my holds. And I didn't make the connection initially with this until like you gave this to me, and then I was like looking at it and I was like, oh, this is the same author as that book that I have on hold. Oh, it's like a thing that she does where she does like a fairy tale, like IRL kind of.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now you know.
Well, the funny thing is, maybe that book is actually amazing and I would love it. Now I'll never know.
An unforgettable story of the beauty and savagery of the Alaskan wilderness. Isn't that what the Snow Child is about, though?
That's why I was like, oh, this is like a thing that she does.
Okay, well, good for her.
I mean, if you're gonna do like if a modern day setting, but you're gonna try to get that backwoods rural fairy tale, thing of like Hansel and Gretel in the woods, Alaska is the best place nowadays to believably set that story.
That's true. Well, maybe I'll have to read that eventually and see if it's any good. No, we really do need to get to Yumi. So Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson.
No.
Here's the thing. This is why I actually don't care how you feel about this. Well, do you want to read the note first and then I'll talk about
It would be
it?
my pleasure.
Okay, great.
I
I need a good oration voice. So
was gonna say, Bookborn didn't actually. These are not Bookborn's words. This is a quote. We've been spending a lot of time talking about Robin Hobb. Comes full circle. So Robin Hobb says, "You chose it. It didn't have to be this way. If you had just tried it my way, just done as you were told, trusted that someone else knew what was good for you, you're to blame for this, not I. You chose this." Kyle Haven from Ship of Magic.
That's for my Ship of Magic fans. um, I laughed so hard writing that. I just want to let you know that like I just was amusing myself. So
also for those who she wraps everything that she sends. So I didn't know what the books were, but the notes were on the outside of the wrapping. So I read that note first before knowing what was in there. And I was like, what are we blaming me for? Like, what? What the heck?
Did you not guess what it was? I thought for sure you would guess because of that note.
I had kind of suspected that this book would be in one of them. But when I just was assaulted with this note, I was like, whoa, what? What is this? And then I opened it and I was like, oh my God. Okay.
So the story, first of all, if you haven't read Ship of Magic, Kyle Haven is like the singlest worst character I've ever read in my entire life. Not poorly written, just like the most infuriating, horrible.
If you find yourself quoting him, then you must be in the wrong.
Hateable, just disgusting character on the planet. And I think I sent you this package like literally a few days after finishing A Ship of Magic. So it was just like really perfect.
On the brain.
But so the story behind Yumi and the Nightmare Painter is like several times Leanna has messaged me being like, but would I like Yumi because I love how this book looks. And every time I'm like, no, Leanna, don't buy Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. You will hate that book. And then like 3 months later, she's like, I don't know. I saw it at my bookstore. Could I buy it? Because it's so pretty. And I would say, no, Leanna, you will hate this book. So that happened a few times. And I thought, you know what? Whatever. I usually send you a Sanderson. YOLO. You want this book? I will give it to you. But like, I am convinced you will heavily dislike it because one of the reason I rated it a little lower was like the romance bothered me. But like, I'm a romance hater. Like I can be a hater about romance on a dime. And there's like anime tropes in this, I guess you could say, that are just like annoying to me. And I think they would annoy you like 10 times more. And so there's that. And then there's also like just enough Cosmere magic stuff at the end that like carries a lot of weight that you would also be like, I hate that. And then there's like your whole a soul is in a cigarette box. And like that's not in here, but like it kind of is.
Should you explain a soul's not a cigarette box?
If you don't understand, that's your fault.
That's true. You should just know the lore.
You need to know the lore. You need to go watch the past TBR videos. That will be referenced a lot.
I should. My coasters are out of reach, unfortunately. But Bookborn got me coasters. That's the soul is not an inanimate.
Used it while you read this book. So anyway, so tell me is that right or am I wrong? And is this like a Skyward situation?
Oh, it's not a Skyward situation.
Okay.
Mostly I just found the characters extremely irritating, particularly Yumi. Like Painter was inoffensive. Painter was kind of just whatever. Yumi was so irritating beyond belief to me. So one, I just like found them irritating. And then also like I knew just like from how this is going that I'm meant to be interpreting their conversations as a romantic banter. But I was like, there's no chemistry here. I just know that like according to like the logic of this story, that's what's supposed to have been happening. It has not been happening. I was there, did not happen. They were just saying annoying things to each other. So I just actually like the Cosmere-ness of it or whatever, like maybe I would have been annoyed if I had like been invested in these characters, but by that point I was just annoyed with them. I was like, well, what's happening? And then I was annoyed that towards the end of the book the narrator just tells you what's happening because there was like no way. It's like, speaking of like having a character just tell you things, he was just like,
There's
so
no way
here's
to
what
explain it
happened.
otherwise. That's what I mean by like the Cosmereness, because like it has to explain the magic system. I just knew you were gonna get annoyed by that.
It's not even like just the magic system. It's like the, okay, so how did we get here to this point? Let's just halt the story completely and be like, here's like narrator here. Here's what happened, because there's no other way to tell you this.
Yeah, I am. My problem with the romance was like the minute we had a bath scene, like you've completely lost me. Like that's just like I just completely gone. And I agree with you. I think the romance is more narratively driven in terms of I have read books and I know what the setup of a romance is. I think for me, because historically Sanderson, I have never been invested in his romances. That doesn't bother me because
Not
it's
even
like
in Mistborn?
no, I actually I hated that when I first read Mistborn was the first book I ever read of Sanderson's other than Wheel of Time back in like 2012. And when I read Mistborn 1, I was like such a hater. I was like, this is the stupidest romance I've literally ever read. Like I was so, and I loved Mistborn, but I literally did not get on board until book 3 with that romance. And then finally I was like, I
That's
guess.
funny, because in book 3 is when I no longer liked it.
No, that was the first time that I was like, I guess we're here and I guess it's fine. So like, I think because I have so been conditioned to feel that way about all, in fact, there's only one book I actually liked the way he wrote a romance, which was Warbreaker. That's the only book that I truly believed those two characters had chemistry, like just in my opinion. I know you didn't love Warbreaker, but like I actually believed those characters. What?
But it wasn't
You
because
didn't like.
I didn't. Yeah.
That's true. That wasn't your problem with the book.
Yeah.
But I think when I read his romances, I am just like, well, that's fine. There's gonna be like it just doesn't bother me because I know intellectually that no romance Sanderson writes is going to be like super chemistry driven. You know what I mean?
Feel like, yeah, but I feel like I don't know. Like I can have like it can be a chemistry that's just kind of like a meeting of like kindred spirits, and I can be super invested in that. It doesn't have to be like it can just be like, oh, these people like they fit, like, and I'm here for that. But I feel
actually,
like
if we're talking about, we just talked about live ship traders. Like the first romance I have been invested in a long time is from live ship traders.
You weren't invested.
I don't want to say it. Is it a spoiler if I say their names?
Maybe.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. But like, you weren't invested in any of Fitz's relationships?
Absolutely not. Those are the worst.
Poor Fitz. Okay,
but
what
like
about
like those are two people that like I'm invested in because I just believe it so fully. And it's rare for me. It's just like it's rare. I'm just a hater, even in books like Guns of the Dawn, right? Like I was a total hater about that romance despite loving Guns of the Dawn. Like I'm just a hater. So I think when I went into Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, because I'm so attuned to just
there's one romance that you have enjoyed.
What romance did I enjoy?
Carry On by Rainbow Rowell.
Actually, this is great. Carry On. The book she gave me was that last year?
No, I think it was 2, 3. It was a while ago.
3 years ago. It might have been 2 years ago. Carry On is a fake Harry Potter fan fiction. And is currently my highest rated romance. So like really out of 3 stars.
Take what I can get.
Next year you should just give me book 2. You should just force me to read it.
Says I'm not going to.
So I think like for me, I guess the whole point being is like when I go into a Sanderson, I am never expecting to like be motivated by a romance. So like then I ignore it and it's fine for me and I just accept it.
Well, that's like the focal point of this. It's not just like also in there. It's like
true, but like, I think I loved Painter and like the nightmares and like that whole mechanic, like because I do really like magic. I love that part of it.
With this book, like in its nothing about the execution, but in its elements, and therefore like this has the DNA to be something that I would love, is Strange the Dreamer. Because like the way that they're not really actually like together, they're like mentally astrally together, and like and especially Yumi is this like really sheltered, naive, like has never seen the outside world, has never been able to. She's like been locked into this like ceremonial life. She's so similar to Sarai in like a lot of like what her life has been and how her disposition should be. And I feel like in Strange the Dreamer, Sarai is naive, but she's not like obnoxious the way Yumi is. She's very like bewildered by the world as she would be. And I feel like if Yumi had been a lot more like Sarai, I would have found her, you know, charming and innocent and would have like rooted for that. But instead she was like a spoiled brat and like really like annoying and like, and then like Painter too, he's kind of like Laszlo, where like his like superpower is, you know, like he's like his imagination and his creative works, and like that's kind of like what brings him together with this love interest. And there's just like that could be so beautiful and be such a thing that I would totally be on board for. But then it just like
first of all, Kyle, no, she did not like it. I don't know where you're getting that from. Also, I didn't say I ignored it. I just said like Sanderson, I love his books and I don't like the way he writes romance. Those things can coexist. Like, because he doesn't focus a lot on romance. So like it never bothers me because they're usually not a huge part of his stories.
Right. But so like this is different because like that is like a big part.
Yumi is like the only book where I will say it is like a major element. The only other one I would say is Warbreaker, but like ironically, Warbreaker is one of like the only romances in general in a book I actually quite enjoy. But I'm going to say about Yumi is like, she has been bred to think she is all that. So like, I think it is an interesting character choice that she is so obnoxious. It is annoying. And I can understand someone being like, I just didn't want to read it. But like, I do think she wouldn't be like, what's her face from Strange the Dreamer? Because everyone's like, you're so important. And we can't even look at you or whatever it is. So I think it needs, that's like a foil to Painter, whose name I like, not sure I've ever internalized.
He definitely has a name.
He does have a name, but I just call him Painter. To Painter, in that Painter is like obviously this deeply like self-effacing and like boy. Like I do think there is an element to that for me that really works as a contrast, even if like I get it, like she is annoying.
I feel like there's a way to, again, like have that be her character. Because, I mean, she wouldn't, obviously, they're not exactly like Sarai and Laszlo. But, I mean, Sarai is, you know, God spawn. So she has also, like, lived, like, a life of luxury and been away in a different way, though. So, yeah, for sure. Like, she's not been amped up to believe she's all of that. But there is, like, a level of privilege to Sarai's life versus Laszlo. And Laszlo's been the bottom of the barrel and is very, you know, self-effacing. But, like, where Yumi could be that way, but then if the narrative had like moments where she's sort of being humbled by the realization that like that's not the case, and those moments could be like moments of growth and like of bonding between them, where it wasn't necessarily like really obnoxious or played for a joke or whatever, you know, where she's having to kind of confront having that attitude about things and the greater world out there, that the world is a lot bigger than her, and like, you know, like that there could be like moments that humanize her because of that, but instead she's like that. I guess that was the thing. She never like felt like a person to me. She just felt like an anime character, but like an annoying anime character that's not a main character. She's like that character that shows up to scream and like be in a tiny dress and then run off, and you're like, there's that character. You're like, not like a character that you're like invested in.
I can see that. First, I just want to say something. Kyle is commenting, but clearly watching the replay, which is why I think we're all confused by his comments. Leanna did love Windhaven, which is clearly where you are right now. Did not like Yumi. Yes, here we go. He figured it out. Oh, where is he? Yeah. I don't know what else I was going to comment on. Yeah, I can I can see that. Like, and I think it was compared a lot to an anime. I want to say a spoiler real quick. So anyone who's on this live who wants to read Yumi and hasn't yet, skip forward a minute. I'll just say it and then we can
like hold up your hand so they can mute it.
Yes, I will hold up my hand when it's time to unmute. So we're going to start mute now. I actually, like, really unpopular opinion, I kind of wish Yumi would have died at the end.
Yes, 100%. I was already annoyed, but then when that also one got like immediately reversed, I was like, of course.
Yeah, so I actually like, that was my one thing, and like people convinced me out of it, and like I think I'm finally to terms with it. But I was like, Oh, she should have died though. Like, I think that would have made the stakes of the story just like a little bit better for
It's
me.
funny because the end of Strange the Dreamer also has both of us going like, the end is wrong. It shouldn't have ended like that.
So it's just like it kind of that did frustrate me a lot because unfortunately because I do to your chagrin know like way too much about the Cosmere. Like it is like I know so much. I know mechanically her coming back makes sense. Like I read it and I was like, well, this isn't even like a what's the word? Like a what's the word that in Greek literally means a god comes down? Why can't I think of that phrase? Thank you. I like how I do the translation, but I couldn't think of the Greek. And I just read The Secret History, which is like all Greek. I see it just took it out of my brain. It wasn't even that because like I know by the mechanics of the Cosmere that is what can and would happen. And yet I wanted the other thing, which is like I think would just be more emotionally staged. So
Well,
yeah, I
but
did.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's because it's not that it's a betrayal of mechanics, it's a betrayal of like narrative impact.
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear that you wanted that too. And I think there were other people who read it that was like, I think that would have just, given it more
Well, this was
narrative.
a moment where because I had been sort of annoyed and it was kind of childish. And then when it did that, I was like, you know what? Actually, kudos. It went there. I kind of nope. Okay, they ended it. Never mind.
Yeah. And I think it also would be good too because she was in such a different timeline that like her death, it would be sad, but also like, well, you guys weren't together. So like,
Yeah.
so that was like the one time where I feel like knowing that something could happen was actually disappointing. But I think a lot of people would say I'm crazy because people hate when
Now,
people
just
die
to
in romance.
spoil something that we're not even here to talk about, so I'll be super vague. But you've read all of his Dark Materials, right?
I've only read the first two.
Oh,
Hold on. Are we done talking about that spoiler though? So I can put up my hand? Okay.
yeah.
You can unmute. Come back to us. But you can spoil it. It would not bother me if you spoiled his Dark Materials. I need to read the third book. I just haven't.
There's just like there's like a lot, but like the two like Lyra and oh my gosh, what's his name? William?
Yeah, the guy.
Yeah. So like the way their story ends, I think you would really like, is all I'd say about that.
Okay. Yeah, I read the first book as an adult, so I only read it like a couple years ago. I'd never read it as a kid and like fell in love with the Golden Compass. I was just like,
it's the best one of the three.
I can't believe I didn't read this as a kid. Like this would have meant so much to me. I'm going to make sure my kids read it. And then I read the second book and I was like, well, that was good.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't bad, but it like just wasn't nearly as good as the Golden Compass. And then like I meant to read the Amber Spyglass and just like never got around to it.
Yeah, I think the first one is like miles and away the best one. Like every time I've read it a few times. Like the first one is like, oh, this is so good. And then like when it expands and starts doing all this other stuff, I feel like there's like pieces in there that I still really, really love. But like as a whole, I feel like it's kind of like lost its way a bit. And then even though like the first one I give like 5 stars every time, and the second and third ones is like the 3 range. But even so, I'm like weeping when I finish the series, even though I would still only give it 3 stars because I'm like the things it did right, it did it like so right, but not enough for me to change my rating.
I get that. Like I get that. I need to finish it. I need to finish it. But the ironic thing, the reason I didn't read The Golden Compass as a kid was like totally a personal choice. And it was because when it came out, everyone was like, it's the atheist Narnia. Oh. And I was like, well, that sounds dumb. And so I never read it. And then I read it as an adult and I was like, that's not what, I mean, I get it. That's what the author says it is.
But like, does the author even say like that specifically? Like,
no, it is the ideology. Like, sure, it is an ideological, like foil to things that are said in Narnia.
For sure.
But like, that makes it sound like it's going to be bad. Because like when people usually say stuff like that, that means the book is bad. We've already.
It sounds like Outlander is the feminist Game of Thrones. You're just like,
because like I liked Narnia as a kid, and so I was like, well, if this is like saying Narnia is trash, I don't want to read it. Well, and then I read it as an adult. I was like, that's not what this is at all. Like it is, but it's not.
Completely derail this conversation. But like when people talk about his Dark Materials, about Philip Pullman and about the atheist Narnia, for sure, like it has a much more like anti established like it's very anti-Catholic church. More than
it's really anti-Catholicism.
Yeah,
more than
and it's not even anti-Catholicism really. I would say it's not anti-Catholicism as a faith. It's anti like the Catholic Church as an institution that's like controlling people. So it's
Yeah.
like it's against controlling people because there's so much in his dark materials that like I think Philip Pullman has gone on record as saying that he is actually either agnostic or atheist. So I'm not going to say that he's religious, but there are things like in his dark materials that are like this is about like souls being real. Like this the story isn't saying that that's not true, that this isn't real. Like the story he's written here, like it is not possible to have like a fully atheist reading of his dark materials.
Yeah, I think so. This is what I would say is like the first book, if I didn't know that term, like it's the atheist Narnia, I would have not caught it at all. Like I think even as an adult, because so much fantasy often makes a established religion the big bad. Like there's so much fantasy does that. So like, I don't think the Golden Compass does that any more than like any other fantasy. I think this was very like 2000s marketing.
Well, I think it was
say,
also
like,
because I think the Catholic Church specifically made a big fuss to
oh,
try to shut it down. So they like brought attention to it.
Streisand effect. Like 100 Streisand affected it. Like if you just hadn't said anything. But then like I will say the second book, like then I would have known. Like you read the second book and you're like, oh, this is like you didn't have to tell me, like this is very clear. And I've heard the third book is like even more extreme. I still want to read it. I do think like, well, anyway, we derailed the conversation. Yeah, so was I right though? Like, did you hate Yumi? Like, where do you rank it on your Sanderson scale?
I don't know, I guess I hate it for different reasons than usual. His characters usually are just kind of inoffensive to me, or I'm like, I find them kind of boring. But
we have like the first two Mistborn,
which are so good.
the top. And then we have Skyward, which is very different, but you gave it 5 stars, so I'm putting it there.
Yep, had a great time.
And then at the bottom, we have Way of Kings. So
Yes.
like in the middle, we have Warbreakers, like right in the middle. Where on this Sanderson timeline chart are we putting Yumi?
That's so hard because like I don't feel passionately about this. You know, it's like Warbreaker and Way of Kings like did things where I was like, I can spend 2 hours telling you why I'm mad about this. Whereas Yumi, I was just like, this is so annoying. And then the one thing that it like kind of I thought was doing a thing, then it didn't even do that thing. And I was like, like I'm just like, oh, it's just like a waste of my time. Whereas the other ones, like again, like Mistborn is like so good, and then like Way of Kings infuriated me for hours and years, and like is the story of my whole entire career on YouTube. You know, Yumi, I'm just like
Emily
annoying.
No,
I guess
Emily doesn't know. Are we not supposed to talk about that? You didn't like Way of Kings? I forget. Is that
no, I just assume that people know. If people know one thing about me, it's that I like First Law, and if they know 2 things about me, it's that I like First Law and that I hate Way of Kings.
Liene had to private her Way of King video because fans.
This is why I have a Patreon. I literally started my Patreon because if that was like my first like patron exclusive, where so I took it down from YouTube.
So if you're a Patreon, you can still watch it?
Yeah, it's like a specific tier of Patreon where you can see my Sanderson content. I have a Warbreaker review. I have my Mistborn video. I have my
and I have a Yumi video. You should send me that one.
Yeah, I was like, if you want to insult me, you have to pay for the privilege. So
yeah, I like I've talked about it a few times because it's like I want to tell people like Leanna and I are friends. See how easy this is? Like I don't fandoms. Yep. They're great. Me and Leanna both have gotten on the wrong side of some fandoms. And you know what the great thing is that this year we get to talk about the fandom you're on the wrong side of, and then in your video we get to talk about the fandom I'm on the wrong side of.
We didn't do that on purpose.
But it's so nice symmetry. Although I will say, like I've said this before, I actually have a lot of affection for how the Witcher fandom hated on me. Because comparatively, like to some of the other fandoms.
Oh, I think I've said that about Sanderson too, where like the Sanderson fans, like in retrospect, well, definitely not great. I was like, it's actually better than some other stuff out there.
Yes, like that's the thing. It's like I now have affection. Like you guys actually weren't that bad. Like comparatively, you were pretty reasonable.
You didn't know how good we had it.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I was right, is all I want you to admit. But like I kept saying you would hate Yumi, and you
I
did
guess
hate Yumi.
I just assumed when you said that I would hate Yumi, and that's kind of what you said too, but like that it was going to be a Soul Is Not a Cigarette box situation where like the
Mhm.
magic in this would just be so like I could not do this. And then I like didn't even care about that. I was just like, yeah,
So
it's like
the astral projection thing didn't bother you?
again, it felt very strange the dreamery to me. And I was like, if you're gonna
Mm.
tell me there's mechanics behind this, I'm like, whatever. I don't want to hear it because I don't think so. But if you're gonna it's kind of treated more in this like dreamy way where I was like, I don't know, there's no
You could
explanation.
accept
It's
it.
just happening. And then I was like, I would love it if I liked the characters it was happening to.
Okay, that's actually an interesting thing. So, like, if the characters were stronger, the plot itself wasn't something that bothered you. That's kind of like
Well, because I feel like, I mean, it does obviously like halt the story to show you some like lore and some like mechanics, but I felt like a lot of what Yumi and Painter were like, what the story was about was just like how it's affecting them, that this thing is a thing in their lives, not like, let's talk specifics and mechanics. It's like, okay, we established these are the rules because like we wake up and this is happening and you're like, this is happening? Is this how it works? Can you see me? Can you not see me? Okay, so these are the rules. Okay, those are the rules, go. And now it's like, so what are we meant to learn from this? Like what it's like a Twilight Zone episode of like, you know, so like this weird thing has happened, but like what are we meant to like what life lesson will be learned? How will they be changed by this? Like that's what this is going to be about. However, we got to the weird situation they're in, and then I didn't like them. And then we got a lengthy explanation of the mechanics of that situation. And I was like, well, okay.
Just based on what you're saying, I think you liked it less than Warbreaker. That's my opinion. But more than Way of Kings.
I feel like with Warbreaker, there was like meat on the bone, and some of it was like stuff that really, really, you know, made me angry. But for me to get angry, I have to take it seriously. Does that make sense? Whereas here, like I didn't like take anything seriously in this, and I don't feel like I was really even meant to. Whereas like Warbreaker, I was like, there's some stuff here that's like really interesting and really cool, and then this other thing that you did, I'm just like ah. Whereas like Yumi, I'm just like.
So yeah, I guess it's the age-old question is like ambivalence worse than hatred. Well, we can't answer that.
Weren't we just messaging about someone being average and how that's so much worse than being bad?
Yes. Yeah, we talked about that with the wolf last year.
So yeah, like I think Warbreaker is worse. I think this is average, and that makes it worse.
Yeah.
Than being bad.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what you learned here, folks.
Yeah, but also 10 out of 10 cover, continue to feel that way. This
and now you can keep it on your shelf, and it can be beautiful on your shelf.
So pretty. But also, like, this looks like a young green bone.
Oh, it totally does.
Yep.
You know, the one thing, have you seen the art in like the special edition of Yumi? I don't think that version has any art, right?
This one?
When did you own that? Why did I send you a book?
Someone gave it to me.
Why did I send you that one then?
Because the cover that I've been in love with this entire time is this one.
Okay. Well, now you own 2 copies of a book you hate.
Yep. But the art in here, I love the art in here.
Yeah.
Very
it's
much.
The best art of the Secret Projects by far, and I'm obsessed with it.
It is.
But
like, tell me this also isn't giving Strange the Dreamer.
It is giving Strange the Dreamer. I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
I was honestly so like this book had the potential to be the Greenbone Saga meets Strange the Dreamer, and then it ended up being just nothing at all.
What a sad review. There's something that's just been bugging me this whole time, and I'm just gonna say it, even though it has nothing to do with anything. And this has to go back, like when Liene and I met in person for the first time several years ago, I was gobsmacked by her height. Because online we are the same height. And she is so much taller than me. And I just want to say that we are wearing the same size shirt. And I know that because I sent that to her. And it hits on your arm so much higher than mine. And mine is down past my elbow. It hits my elbow when I'm down. And I've just been distracted by that the entire time as like proof that you are an Amazonian and I am a hobbit.
Indeed. I think that is also very funny about like people who only know each other from like Zoom calls or like on YouTube and stuff, because I also have, which we talked about in person, an extremely short torso. Yeah. So like when I'm seated, in a video or something. Like, I have the torso of a U height person.
Yeah.
It's all just leg. So
I just remember you, and I wasn't prepared, like, emotionally to be staring up at you all night. Like, just wasn't there. That's all. Yeah. So anyway,
so yeah, if people are having trouble telling us apart, just look up, look down.
look up, look down. If we were in person, you would not have a problem telling us apart. That's actually like when people meet me, like at Dragonsteel, I'm not exaggerating when I say it, like 75% of the people, the first thing they say is like, "Wow, you're short." And so I guess I'm
You'll
glad I
be
did.
shocked to hear this, but people say, "Wow, you're tall."
Okay, so I guess everyone just assumes we're like 5'5". Yeah.
Isn't that like
Sorry,
statistically?
Zach just had to come in and ask me if he could eat the brownies on our counter, which was obviously so important he had to interrupt this.
And the answer is no.
The answer is yes, he can eat them. No, it was not important enough. Yeah, there's actually this.
But isn't like statistically like the average like all women averaged, the average height is like 5'4", 5'5"?
Yes, that is.
So both of us are like greatly diverging from the average.
Really diverging from that. There's a video of me at Dragonsteel that John from Talking Story does. I don't know if you know him. And he's interviewing me and Jake and Ben. Jake from Jake Bishop and Ben from Overly Average Ben. I'm trying to get all their things. They're both like huge. Everyone's huge. And then they're interviewing me and I look like I am 10.
Actually, so it's like
no.
a picture of the Fellowship.
Yes.
The
and I'm the sad Hobbit. Everyone else is elves and I'm Hobbit. Oh, sorry, that was I said Overly Average Ben and I did not mean that. It's Genghis Khan. I knew that. It was a totally different person. It's hard to remember channel names. Yes, I know I got it wrong. I don't think this is true. I think the average woman is 5'5". I think I've Googled
5'4" or 5'5". It's one of those two. It probably changes.
Yeah. So actually below 5 feet is like legally you're short. And I know this because my aunt was below 5 feet and you can get like legal things like help. It is genetic. Yeah, he's also great. Okay, yeah, actually, then we'll get off this tall thing. But Ryan Cahill, he's a buddy of ours. And I met him for the first time though when we went to like a London con a couple years ago. And I hung out with him all day. And that is like assaulting. He is so tall. Like at some point I have to just be like, we need to sit down because I can't just, it's horrible talking to someone like this for long periods of time because you just feel so childish and you'll never understand that, Liana. Like that's the problem is you don't understand how it feels to just feel like I am a child.
Ponderings of Pete, I am the height of an average man.
There you go. So see, we've learned a lot. Anyway, I have the books that Liana sent me because I forgot briefly before this live that we weren't
Turntables. Revenge is a best served cold.
So actually, overall, this year actually went really well. You liked the book I really wanted you to like.
Mistake of offering our hearts up on a platter this year.
Yeah, like it wasn't a mistake because like my heart wasn't in Yumi. I knew you were gonna hate it, so like that's no skin off my back. The Snow Child, like you liked it less than I thought, but I like am not deeply connected to that book. I'm obsessed with Windhaven.
My way.
You gave it a great score, and I would have been shocked if you didn't like Radium Girls. I don't know what there kind of is to dislike about that. I feel like most of our
obviously I dislike everything that's in Radium Girls.
Yes, because we dislike everything, but we're glad it exists as a book.
I mean, it would be a major red flag if somebody said their favorite like comfort read is Radium Girls.
Oh, yeah. That would be a red flag. Like, oh, you're a corporation. That's their favorite comfort read. Like
how do we beat them? This is a manual. Next time.
Liana sent me Slewfoot, which is like a Crucible thing. She sent me a memoir. I gotta move your notes. Hold on. Angela's Ashes, which won a Pulitzer. So there you go. A book actually I had been really interested in reading, so I was very excited. The Book of Elsewhere by Keanu Reeves and China Miéville. I love how this book looks.
So that's your Yumi. Where you're like, this cover, forget the contents. Cover 10 out of 10.
Literally, like when I first saw this, that's like the only reason I wanted to read it. And so then I got it, I was like, yeah.
That is the only reason I wanted to read Yumi.
Yeah, and it's like fine. And then Blood of Elves, the first Witcher book. So you guys will find out. Someone, I forget who it was, one of the comments said, like, you shouldn't read the short stories. You should just skip to the first book. And that is the question
I don't agree with, but
that's the question we will answer next Wednesday, because I have read the first two very famously for my channel. I've read the first two short story collections, and only Liene could have gotten me to continue. And we'll talk about that, I guess, next week. I won't give it to it. And there's a fifth book that my daughter stole, and it was The Little Witcher, which is the Kid Witcher book. So we'll be reviewing that as well.
I had to match you for.
And I guess, spoiler, my kids are obsessed with it because she came in here and saw it on my stack and said, that's my book.
You gotta get it young.
So I was like, okay, cool. So that will be next Wednesday on Liena's channel.
Indeed.
And we all know the best comfort read is Malazan. You know, true for Liena. That's what she snuggles up with at night, is Malazan. And with that, we're signing off. Remember, folks.
Yeah, you've got a week, guys. You go read Blood of Elves, Book of Elseworlds, Bluefoot, and Angela's Ashes. Off you go.
Yeah, you got 1 week to read all these. I think we're giving you plenty of time.
They weren't bricks. You're welcome.
Actually, we did not give each other bricks this year, and I think that was pretty great.
We didn't give each other bricks, and we didn't give each other our entire soul and heart.
I mean, it's true. Sort of in Windhaven, but it was a new soul and heart, so it's okay.
It wasn't.
But yeah, last year was a little brutal for both of us, but we made it through. And now we're here.
It's truly the testament to, like, you can disagree with someone and be friends was last year's swap. Like, we did it. We proved it. We don't have to prove it again.
Never again. We did it. So next Wednesday, come and see. It's going to be fun. And to sign off, yes, Leanna's going to go to bed on her mass market paperbacks of Malazan. And remember, folks, a soul can't be a cigarette box unless you're on my channel. And with that, goodbye.